Alright, this is sprint 3. So here for this week we had to implement our OBB. So here's the class for it. As you can see, it inherits from a collision volume box, which is a new class that ABB and OBB inherit from since they share basically all of the same data for the collision test later. This data can all be accessed through the various get functions of the box, but that means that the ABB and OBB do not need to have those get functions themselves. They just have to worry about the base override functions. So the OBB itself, the data is fairly straightforward. Visitor pattern, debug view, and then we have all of our data being computed here. The visualizer now has a show line, which is still a work in progress, and show OBB, which works. And then our Dragon Math has the new intersect functions, as well as a few helper functions. However, as I'll show later, the intersect does not yet work. That's been something I've been struggling with and debugging. But part of I've just been having trouble with it, and the visualizer, the show line was going to be part of that, but I've been having trouble with that as well, because although it's easy to find how large the box should be, and then from there I can kind of gather the position with the two endpoints and then find the middle of it, I'm having trouble finding the rotation of the line. So that's going to be one of the things that will hopefully be solved by next week, as well as obviously the collision. But in the meantime, I'm going to show off what I do have as far as this game engine is concerned. Not much has changed, and though it looks like it works once we pull away, it does not. It always thinks we're colliding. But it is being visualized correctly. The data does look correct as far as I can tell, based on what's being visualized. So that's promising, at least. So that's mostly it for the coding side of things. However, I do have both of my planning documents fully complete and fleshed out. I did not use the layout provided to me because that was really long and I didn't really think I needed to fill in that much. So this is the planning document for the game. This is just an overview. I'm planning on having 3 levels, a kind of tutorial level where the player has to destroy a couple buildings so that they can get used to the controls, a small city where there will be not only tanks but planes that will fly overhead and drop bombs, and various buildings that, like the first level, can be destroyed by any bullet or bomb that gets dropped. And then a final level where the player has to destroy a large structure. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but a large building with a lot of health, and then enemies are going to be constantly spawning to attack at the player. And then I have going over all of the various what I have to do for the player, the tanks. Then I'm planning out everything for the planes themselves, such as I'm going to be using the model for the frigate that's been provided to us. I know you kind of railed against it, but that was for the player, and I don't want to have to go out and find a new plane model texture pair since I'm not very good at that, either creating or finding them apparently. Planning out the behavior, how I'm going to do it, planning out the bombs, how they will work, and then the buildings are fairly straightforward, and this is my schedule. Week 5, I'm going to do the plane and the bomb, so by then I'll basically have everything done. I'll have all the components ready. For the next 3 weeks, it's just assembling them and creating the levels. For week 9, if I have anything left that I want to add, anything that pops into my head, anything that you suggest, and then making sure that the game is polished, looks okay-ish, And then week 10 is debugging and anything else that's left to clean up. For the particle system, it's a lot more in-depth. This is a general overview of the system, of the hierarchy that I'm going to have. At the very top, we have our manager, which is going to load and store what I'm calling particle systems. We can also give it a text file. A particle system is going to be a vector of particle effects. And particle effects is basically what was shown in the PowerPoint that you gave me. It's going to have a particle effect is in charge of creating emitters, which create bursts, which create particles. It's a given effect. So a particle effect could be smoke, for example. A particle system could be an explosion. So you would have smoke, sparks, some flames, things like that. So with a particle system, you can easily create an explosion and then save it within the manager for use whenever you need it. And I say that here, particle system is for multiple particle effects, and the particle effect is going to have basically all of the data, as we'll go over later. The emitter is going to be the game object that, controls the bursts and all of that. The burst controls the particles spawned at a certain time, and the particles are very bare bones. They're simply objects that have, not game objects, but classes that have the data for what to do. Then I go more in depth on every single class. I have miniature class diagrams. They're not great. Not like official quote-unquote class diagrams, but I'm going over, the variables that they have, the functions that they will probably have. This is all subjects to change, of course, but this is like my goal. And then underneath I talk about, okay, so this is why I decided to do this. This is what I'm probably going to be doing for this idea. Things like that. So for example, I'm talking about, I have angle and angle change. I talk about possibly having angle change within burst, but I wanted each particle to be able to rotate independently, so that it could add a bit more variety to the particles in case it needed it. And I decided to put it in the particle because it would only have an extra line of code, which is that. And then I go into more in-depth talk about really all of them, talking about how I'm going to possibly implement a delay to each particle. So for example, you could have a system where it starts to smoke and then like a couple seconds later it explodes, something like that. And then I also have a schedule here. Week 5, I'm going to do the particle class, get the billboarding to work. Basically, it's just the very bare bones testing stuff to make sure that the sprite, the main concern I'm having here is this sprite. It's not even going to be really a sprite. I'm going to make sure that the 2D texture on, I guess I'm using a box, can work. That's basically what this week is all about. Week 6 and 7 is making the burst, emitter, and particle effect. I can't really think of a way to separate them, since the burst needs an emitter and the emitter needs the particle effect. You need that hierarchy so that you can have an effect work. And that's the goal by week 7, to be able to create a particle effect like smoke and have it work. Week 8 is going to be making particle systems, having all of this work, having multiple effects at the same time. Week 9 is going to be making this particle system manager, and any polish that I'm going to want to throw in. And then week 10 is debugging as well. So that's the schedule that I have. I'll be uploading these to Perforce as well. And that's everything I have for this week.